4 perspectives. And the first one, and we call this a psychological compass. So in the compass, what we have is north, south, east, west. So let's look at the one on top, that the north, that's the neuro. And you can think about that as the neurobiological. And it is what we eat that that contributes to our physiological states. And in fact, so I'll be sharing some of the tips, you might want to jot it down, So there are several natural foods, that can help us to promote better learning ability. And obviously, different kids, they can be different. And we can incorporate some of these food, into their diets, and I think it's worth a try. And even you as parents or a teacher can also consider that as well. Number one is cherries. Cherries, the fruit cherry, they are a natural source of melatonin. So this will help them to sleep better. When they have a good quality of sleep, their brain functions better. How many of you guys love cherries? If you like cherry, press 2 in the chat box. So I know that you have been, eating your cherries. Great, wonderful. I'm glad that you guys have been eating your cherries. So cherry, number one, is able to create a natural source of melatonin so that we can sleep better. And number 2 is almonds. Almonds. So almonds have a very good source of magnesium, which can have a calming effect on the human body. And again, it helps to promote sleep as well. And it can also provide the protein and the healthy fats that can help stabilize the blood sugar throughout the night when your kid is sleeping. So almonds. So press number 3 in your chat box if you've been eating your almonds. Great. Wonderful. Awesome. Awesome. So you have cherries, you have almond. What other food can we think of? Kiwi. Okay, so kiwi, the green color, fruit, again, very rich in their antioxidants, the vitamins and minerals, and it will help to boost our serotonin, right? And these ingredients can help to regulate the sleep pattern and to improve our sleep quality as well. So you can see all these food are helping, the kids or we as a human being to sleep better. And other forms of, food that you can consider. In fact, not just food, you can think about the drinks like herbal tea, right? Certain herbal tea like valerian root, lavender, all these kind of teas. How many of you guys have tried lavender tea? If yes, press 3 in the chat box. Lavender. So lavender, great, wonderful. Wow, I see lots of 3s in the chat box. So lavender has a very calming property as well, and it'll promote relaxation as well. So you can, like sip some lavender tea, before, for your kids, before they start doing their homework, so that they can have a, relaxed state and they can absorb the academic materials better as well. And other things that's worth tipping you guys is like whole grains like oats, brown rice, all these are rich in nutrients such as magnesium and tryptophan. And these nutrients can help, again, to regulate sleep patterns and increase the learning abilities. Vegetables, very important, right? I'm sure you've heard of, if not enough vegetables, you might be constipated, right? So the leafy greens, such as the spinach, kale. How many of you guys love spinach? Press 5 in the chat box. 5 for spinach, the vegetable spinach. Yes, awesome, awesome. So spinach, again, very high in magnesium, can help to calm the nervous system. So you can see the calming effect is so important in terms of building up our learning ability, and we can sleep better as well. Last but not least is omega-3. Omega-3, you can find that in salmon, in tuna, in mackerel, or even in the supplement magnesium. So press number 6 in the chat box if you've been eating your omega-3s or your salmon, tuna. Great, great, awesome. Wow, you guys are incredible. You've been eating well. High five. So again, it's really essential to maintain a healthy diet so that we can have good sleep hygiene. And good sleep hygiene is so important in terms of building up our learning ability. All right, so you can think of this as the neuro aspects. And neuro aspects obviously also includes things like, our exercise, right? Doing home exercise, for 15 to 30 minutes, can also be very helpful, to build our brain functions. Yoga, stretching, dancing. How many of you guys have been doing your yoga? I think yoga originated from India, isn't it? So if you've been doing yoga, press 7 in the chat box. Press 7. Yoga, stretching, or dancing, or some form of exercise. Great, wonderful, good. So you can see the neural part. A lot of you guys are doing well in that one. Okay, so we have to understand, because the neural part is so important. What we eat will contribute to who we are, right? So yeah, home exercise is so important. And in the compass, we also have the east, and that's the environment. And environment, we are looking at a few things. One is the air quality of the environment that we're in. It could be a home environment, school environment, office environment. The air quality or the sound, is it like too provoking to the ears? So the environment, is it a conducive environment for learning? And besides the physical environment, we can also look at the social environment. So are your kids having good social relationship with their peers, right? And I think in the pandemic, when we are all under the lockdown, so a lot of social inhibitions. So people are longing for their friends and relatives. So that's why video conferencing would help, during the coronavirus time, and I think we should continue, advocating, for kids or a human being, to have a healthy social relationship with friends and with relatives as well, so that we can proactively show care with one another. Okay, so if we look at a compass again, we also have what else? We have the environment, and we have the spiritual. So down there, the S, the self, it's spiritual. And spiritual, we are not just talking about the religious elements, but it's about our life purpose. What's the meaning of life, right? Or what do you want to contribute to this planet, right? So if your kid already knows, like, in future, I'm going to be, let's say, a pilot, or I want to be a doctor. Wow, they have already secured the spiritual part, in terms of psychological health. And the good thing, as I mentioned earlier, with a strong career path or strong spiritual dimension, is the kids have won half the battle. They don't have to, like, constantly seeking for external rewards in order to build their passion for academic work, right? So once they have their career locked, right, the rest of them will be, just a reverse engineer kind of thing. They would just work backwards. Like, they would think of what a choice of subjects to study in order to reach their goals, right? So after this, we'll have Sadaf to also talk about, the SOI, how, those skill sets can also lead to their career. And with that, that will build up the spiritual dimension as well. Last but not least, in the compass is the West, right? Let me see, West should be this side, right? The way of thinking. So the way of thinking is talking about the patterns that the kids or a human being is thinking. And we have to understand there are two kinds of thinking. One is negative thinking, and one is positive thinking. And a lot of people, including the kids, they are indulging in a lot of negative thinking. Like, for example, if they were brought up in a way that they are not good enough, right? Then their emotions, their thoughts, their actions would all gearing towards they're not good enough, right? And they will be always in a fearful mode that they are not going to do well in their schoolwork, academic work, their homework, exam, everything, right? So one of the ways, some of the tips I can teach you now is to help our kids to challenge these negative thinking. So one of the ways is, let's say, I'm not good enough, right? So you can, like, challenge this negative thinking. Are you 100% sure that you're not good enough? Is there any evidence to support this idea that you're not good enough? And most of the time, it's lying, right? So another way is to turn that sentence around is, I'm good enough, or I am smart, something like that. And you can together with the kids to find out what are the events or episodes which they have been doing well, right? To count their success. And by doing that, it would then encourage them to keep having this positive feeling and this positive thought that they are good enough, right? So these are some of the ways that we can work together with the kids to combat that distorted thinking. Obviously, there are also traumatic experiences that might, lead to the negative thinking, and it really depends on how severe or how traumatic those events are. And sometimes if it's so severe, you probably have to get the kid to engage a counselor or a psychologist to deal with this negative traumatic events. All right, does it make sense? All right, so if this so far makes sense to you, can you press 0 in the chat box so that I know I can move on to the next part? Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So what I'm going to do now is I want to show you guys a video, which is a cognitive perceptual exercise. And once the video finish, I'll have Sadaf to talk about some of these cognitive training concepts. All right, so let's enjoy this video.
What's going on in the brain when you learn? In order to learn anything, whether it's math, a foreign language, guitar, or how to dribble a basketball, you need to create and strengthen pathways in your brain. Think about shooting a free throw. Know that feeling when you've got it down and don't even have to think about it? That's muscle memory. Here's the thing. Muscle memory lives in the brain, not the muscles. Your brain controls everything your muscles do, and it does this by activating specific neural pathways for each and every movement. These are functional pathways, neurons working together to achieve a goal. Say you're learning how to shoot a free throw. If it's your first time doing it, you don't yet have a pathway for that movement in your brain. You need to create it. Let's use an analogy to look at what's happening in the brain during this time. When you're first learning, your brain is like a forest full of trees and dense foliage, with no clear pathway between point A and point B. As you learn the mechanics of shooting a free throw, you create a trail through the forest. Now you can shoot the free throw because you've created that pathway in your brain, but you probably don't make many shots because it's so new. The pathway isn't very clear yet. In order to improve your free throw, you need to refine and strengthen the free throw pathway in your brain. The way you do that is through practice. Practice gradually widens the trail through the trees, turning it into a dirt road between A and B. You're starting to get pretty good now. You're making more free throws than not. You don't have to think about the mechanics as much. That's because the pathway gets stronger after each practice rep, and you've done a lot of reps. With even more practice, the dirt road turns into a paved road connecting A and B, allowing information to be transmitted at a faster rate. Now you're a 70% free throw shooter, and when you step up to the line, you don't even have to think about it. Eventually, with enough practice, what started as a trail has become a full-blown highway. Now you're a master, draining almost every free throw, and the movement is completely second nature. Scientists call this plasticity, and it's your brain's innate ability to create and strengthen connections between neurons. These connections are the path through the forest.
So this video clearly tries to explain us that when we are creating a neural pathway, it refers to a process where we are strengthening connections for the students. Now, when we are strengthening the connections for the students, don't you think it is especially very important for all those children who are having learning challenges, who are very hyperactive, or who probably have their own delayed developmental milestones? The brain's ability using cognitive perceptual exercises, it is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming a new connection. And this new connection helps them better with learning, better with retention, better experience, and it also makes sure that they are now motivated to learn more and more. Hence, when we talk about cognitive training, our objective over here is that cognitive training is basically helping us to exercise our brain muscles, which means that today I have difficulty with reading, probably visual tracking as an ability of the mind. Probably it is the visual closure which allows me to get the letters together to make a word. Or probably it's my ability to use vocabulary and make sense of that information. Maybe these abilities are not developed, and due to which I am struggling with my reading, writing, learning, memorizing. So cognitive training is one of the ways to help students who are at learning risk or support the learning needs and requirements of SEND students, because this will allow them to pay attention. This will allow them to catch up with the other students of the classroom. And as how Dr. Adrian explained us, that the compass is very, very important, whether it's the food, whether it's the environment, whether it's the motivation, every factor needs to be incorporated, because engaging in all such tasks helps us to create pathways to improve their overall cognitive function. So what is the role of cognitive training? When we talk about the role of cognitive training, it is going to help me with executive function. Now, you must be wondering, it's a very technical word. I'll simplify for you. It's the HR of my brain that allows me to stay on the task, that allows me to have better control with my attention and complete the activity which I have started. It allows me as a student to even prioritize. Now, a child who is a SEND student and he has difficulty with maths, we all know that. He will not prepare for his maths test, but he wants to complete the project, which is after 2 months to be submitted. So he doesn't know how to prioritize, how to balance. So the cognitive training will help him to get that balance. Senses, all our senses are the receptors of learning. Now, sometimes we use only one sense and sometimes we get confused what to do. Addressing sensory challenges and overcoming that, we are just making more ways of grasping information and learning information. And at the same time, if you're able to give every child a personalized approach, something which is for that particular student, because we all know no two students are going to be alike. So giving individualized learning is simply allowing them to take control of what they want to do, how they want to do, and how they are going to make stronger neural corrections that can help them to overcome their learning challenges. Adding a few more, cognitive training plays a very important and a very crucial role in supporting all the exercises of the brain. So for example, if we are talking about problem solving, we are talking about critical thinking. These words are very commonly used, but let's get to the basic. If the child doesn't have the required ability to put certain things in a specific order, his problem solving will always be a task for him. He will always struggle over there because he doesn't know how to, put it in a specific order and work. Through cognitive perceptual exercises, we will ensure that his abilities over there are well developed. Coming down to self-regulation. Self-regulation is all about how we are regularizing our, thoughts, our actions, taking responsibility. A very recent survey was done, and that survey said between the ages of 8 to 12 years, that survey spoke for those particular age group of children. It said that 62% of children improved using self-regulation technique. Now, you must be wondering, what is self-regulation technique? Now, self-regulation techniques are like, if I have to put it down for you, it could be something that is allowing you to first understand your thoughts, your emotions, your habits. So for example, mindfulness, yoga, we spoke about it, right? Physical activity, time management and planning, seeking support when you know you're not going wrong, cognitive restructuring are all adding up towards self-regulation. And the last is you're enhancing your social skills, because when we talk, when we interact, when we participate, when we are with certain people, we learn. We learn by watching, we learn by listening, we learn by doing. At the same time, when we engage in some conversation, somebody challenges us. So as Dr. Adrian says, are you 100% sure? So you can actually turn for students and make them more smarter. So when we talk about cognitive training, we are simply talking about using those brain muscles in directed ways to strengthen the neural pathway for the students so that it can be highly beneficial in addressing their learning needs.
Right. So thanks, Sada, for that. And I'll now continue to share 4 tips over here how you can help to increase the learning abilities of SEN children. So one of which is we will have to try to develop a practical learning plan and schedule with the child's involvement with the plan. Encourage the child to participate in the development of the plan together. Right. And number 2 is we try to foster the child's self-management skills and autonomy. And how do we do that? We can help the child, to set small goals and establish a reward mechanism. And number 3 is we try to utilize supportive tools to aid the child's focus and attention. So what are some of the tools out there? You can use things like reminders, visual cues to help the kids to focus their attention. And also, we can guide the kid to reflect on their learning process and develop self-evaluation abilities so that they can, adjust their behavior, their learning approach in order to achieve their goals ultimately. So you can see you can also use things like the timers, all that, especially for SEN kids, they need to have something visual, right? And because most of the time they're not aware of the time, right? So by having these visuals, it can also help them as well. And we can also, try our best, to control the usage of electronic devices with the kids, because if you look at 10 kids, almost like 10 of them are dealing with electronic devices, right? But what's interesting is if you look at ADHD kids, attention deficit kids, if you look at how they play with their mobile phones, you can see how engaged they are, right? But it's when we put something that's less exciting in front of them, that's where their attention, will drop. So I think one of the ways to help SEN kids is to build their consistency across the visuals that they are being stimulated with. So some of the key points is we have to understand the children's needs and relationship with their electronic devices through communicating with them. Communicating with the children to understand their needs and their dependency on electronic devices. For example, it's not like they can't use an electronic device. I mean, there are also benefits of using electronic devices, right? Not just communication, but there are also some games and apps in electronic devices that can help foster, their cognitive functioning, right? But I think it's about having a balance, right, between how much they're using it, not too much and not too little, right? And number 2 is we can try to develop some family guidelines for the use of electronic devices, such as including the time limits and content restriction based on the age of your child. And number 3 is we can promote alternative activities and experiences to diversify your child's lives. So it's not just about playing the iPhone, for example. There are also other non-iPhone activities that can be very exciting as well, right? Not just the phone. So we can, encourage the children to have a well balance of their activities, whether it's online or offline. And number 4 is we can intentionally reduce their dependency on the electronic devices and to foster their new interests. So I think the overarching message is about us as parents or teachers or caregivers. We have to encourage the children to have a more balanced approach to manage the use of, say, the electronic devices, focusing more on the communication, rule setting, and cultivate a broader range of activities and interests with the children. But sometimes, it can be quite a challenge, isn't it? Especially when children are dealing with procrastination. Now, how many of you guys have children who procrastinate a lot? Like telling them to do their homework and they're like procrastinating. If that's you, press maybe press 9. 9, like it's a alarming number, right? 9 in the chat box. How many of you guys have kids who have always seem to be procrastinating? Wow, we see a lot of 9s coming up in the chat. Okay, so this brings me to the next slide. Then we will see how some of the tips we can help with the kids who procrastinate. But we have to understand usually why kids procrastinate is because there's a psychological underpinning that is happening within the child. Maybe because, number one, the child sees the task, say homework, to be very unpleasant or boring or challenging, so they would seek all their strength to avoid them or delay to start them, right? So, and again, this also to do with the lack of interest. They find it difficult and they perceive a negative consequence of doing these adverse tasks. Number two, to be the time inconsistency, because usually SEN kids, they tend to seek immediate gratification over long-term goals. So therefore, it leads to a mismatch between their intentions, like wanting to complete a task, and their actions, that's to procrastinate, right? So therefore, we have to, help them, to learn how to, not to have things being given to them immediately, right? Number three is their sense of perfectionism and the fear of failure. Because some kids, they procrastinate because they fear that they're not able to complete a task perfectly. And this can stem from their desire to avoid embarrassment or a negative evaluation from other people. And number four could be poor self-regulation. They don't have effective self-regulation, as what Sadaf talked about, like mindfulness and all that, right? And it could also due to the anxiety and the stress that they are experiencing. And procrastination can be seen as a coping mechanism for the kids who experience these anxiety or stress. Maybe the stress could be due to a particular task or a deadline, and so delaying or procrastinating can provide a temporary relief, to the kids. Or it could be a lack of motivation or goal setting. So, as I mentioned, the lack of intrinsic motivation can be one of the reasons why they procrastinate. And finally, it could be cognitive biases, such as the tendency to underestimate the time and effort required to complete the task. Maybe they would think it would take a long time, like maybe a week just to finish the task, but that could be done in 10 minutes, right? It's the cognitive bias, right? Or the time inconsistency. So therefore, we can teach kids, to learn how to break down the task, to set small goals, and provide positive feedback to help the child to gain these successes. And we can help to reduce these distracting factors in the environment. Like as mentioned, the sound, could be the air quality, so that they can have a more focused learning space. We can also teach children some time management skills. I wonder whether you've heard of the Pomodoro technique. I think it's from Japan. And in fact, this Pomodoro technique is time management method developed by Francesco Grillo in the 1980s. And it's a very, very popular productivity technique that kids can use that to improve their focus and to help them manage their time more effectively. So some of the key principles of this Pomodoro technique, and Pomodoro actually means the tomato. So that's why I put a tomato here as a visual. So the Pomodoro technique is to use a timer. And the timer, basically, we can set like 25 minutes. And so 25 minutes as the basic unit of work. So 25-minute interval is called a Pomodoro, right? So, and with this Pomodoro technique, we can help the kids to focus on their work. So during each Pomodoro of 25 minutes, the kids will dedicate their full attention to the task at hand, avoid distractions, avoid multitasking, just work on one task at a time. And after that, after 25 minutes, they take a short break. So we call it a completion of a Pomodoro. And the kids would take a 5-minute break. So think about 25 minutes of focused tasks and 5 minutes of break. And after that, they complete a Pomodoro again. So 25 and 5 minutes break, 25 and 5 minutes breaks again. So after 4 Pomodoros, so in other words, there will be about 2 hours of work. And after that, we give the child a longer break, usually about 15 to 30 minutes. All right, you can try it. So it was something like this: 25 minutes, 5 minutes break, 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes break, 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes break, and the final 25 minutes of work, and a 15 to 30 minutes break. And they can restart the Pomodoro cycle again. So some of the key benefits of this Pomodoro technique is to allow children to have a more proper rest and to cultivate a good routine habit of focused work and intentional rest. And also, I'd like to share some tips how we can communicate, let's say, with an ADHD kid. Because in SEN, ADHD or autism, all these are under the umbrella of SEN. So one of the ways is we can try to maintain our patients as caregiver, as parents or teachers, and provide empathy to the child, always providing positive encouragement. And in behavioral psychology, what we want to do is we want to increase their good behavior by praising them, right? If we want to remove some of their bad behaviors, like for example, their whining, their shouting, or their emotional turmoil, we will give some form of punishment. And punishment would be not yelling, not shouting, but maybe to remove some of their incentives. Like for example, if usually the child has like 25 minutes of YouTube. So because the child has had exhibited some bad behavior, then the punishment would be like maybe taking away some of the YouTube time, So instead of 25 minutes of YouTube, probably now you only have 5 minutes of YouTube. And I would encourage parents, when we remove these incentives, we try not to remove all of them, right? So as I mentioned, 25 minutes of YouTube, we just remove like, say 20 minutes instead of remove all of them. Otherwise, they will feel a sense of failure, they feel that everything has been taken away from them, right? But if we just take away a little bit, then they would still have some kind of hope, in them, and then we would then offer more praise to them if they do well in certain things, or we give them back the rewards if they are doing well. So remember, rewards to increase their good behavior, and punishment in terms of taking away their taking away things that are rewarding to them, and that is a way to remove their bad behaviors. All right. So we can also use simple and direct language to give clear instructions and feedback. We maintain eye contact with them so that they would have a sense that we are really focusing on them and not like looking at the mobile phone and talking to them. A lot of parents are doing this, like talking to the kids with their phone on their hand. So make sure we have 100% eye contact, and so that we'll guide the focus of the attention on their eyeball. And we can also appropriately adjust the environment to reduce any of the distracting factors. As I mentioned, the sound, the air, right? And regularly communicate with, say, the teachers as well to understand more of the child's situation. So as an acronym, I want to give you a gift. It's called the FACE technique. FACE as in the F stands for we focus, F for focus. We focus on the child. And that might also imply intentionally removing any obstacles that might be distracting, so that the child knows that, this is my time between you and me. between daddy and me or mommy and me, right? And A is to acknowledge whatever the child says to us, and we can acknowledge that by like nodding our head, or saying non-verbal cues of acknowledgements. And C is to be aware of their, the cues, the body language. So for example, if they say, I'm okay, but they're actually crossing the arm, they're looking down, obviously the body language is telling us likewise, right? So we have to focus on their cues, their body cues especially. And finally, the E is empathy. Empathy means we won't be judgmental, but we will reflect what they say to us back to them. So in other words, we try to paraphrase what they say to us and we say it back to them. And I understand, sometimes paraphrasing can be so brain consuming, I would say. So sometimes we can, use mirroring techniques, like we just repeat after the child's last 3 words. So for example, the child would say, I'm so tired at school today. The teacher gave me a lot of work, and what we can just say is a lot of work, right? The last 3 words, and allow the kid to keep talking, right? And that would make us caregivers, or teachers or parents, a more relaxing and enjoyable time with the kids, and we in a way that we won't be taxing too much of our brain. Because as I mentioned, if we paraphrase everything all the time, right, that's really very tiring, isn't it? So I would recommend maybe mirroring, like reflecting the last 3 words sometimes, and maybe sometimes you can add some paraphrasing, and sometimes you can label the emotional state, like, sounds like you are disappointed, isn't it? Because when we label their emotions, we are like speaking to the amygdala in the brain. And what's really interesting is in the brain, the amygdala is always doing a matching. Like the amygdala knows exactly that, let's say the child is disappointed. And when we say you are disappointed, is it disappointed equals to disappointed, and there's a match, the amygdala or the system inside the brain will release a calming hormone that helps to calm down the kids. All right. So even if you guess the emotional wrong, it doesn't really matter, because the child will probably say, no, I'm not disappointed. I'm just angry, Then we just got to mirror that. Say, you are angry. So angry equals anger, right? And he feels better. So that's why I highly encourage we have to show our face, right? Face, what's face again? We focus on the kid, acknowledge what we just heard from them, right? Or we acknowledge their bodily cues as well, and also we show empathy. All right. So with that, I'm going to pass the time back to Sadaf, and who's now talk about SOI, structured intelligence, which is so important, which is like the software part of the entire computer. All right. So over to you, Sadaf.
Thank you so much. So when we talk about this software part of the brain, which is so very important, it is composed of multiple small abilities. Now, when we talk about structure of intellect cognitive program, it is about implementing specific strategies and approaches that will cater to every student's strengths and challenges. That doesn't mean that a SEN student won't have strength. That doesn't mean he won't be good at creativity. He will come with his own set of a profile. And how we can begin with that? We can begin this by assessing the children on a proper cognitive assessment that will help us to determine their strengths and limitations. Now on the screen, what you see is a chart that talks about 90 learning abilities. Each of these abilities is like a foundational ability. Now when I don't have these foundational abilities, what happens to me in the classroom? Now in the classroom, I will have attention difficulties. In the classroom, I will be somebody who would be reading very slowly, or I would be reading very fast without comprehending. I'll not be able to match up with what all the other students are doing. It's not just about matching up, but it's about if I'm reading fast or reading very slowly, is my brain actually comprehending those words and sentences? At the same time, it will also talk about my overall language, my communication, my ability to, analyze a situation, talk about silly mistakes which I overcome. I'm always stuck in one loop, but never able to, define something. Orally, I'll speak very well, probably, but when it comes to the written part, I may not be good. I may have my own sensory sensitivities, such as to noise, light, texture, which often we see with mild autistic children who are a part of a regular school. So cognitive programs can effectively work with sense students to target specific activities. And when I talk about these target specific activities, I have some sample, processes to show you all. Because what we do is we start with an assessment, then we analyze, and then we have a cognitive intervention where we make sure that all the components of the psychological compass are taken into consideration to work with the child in an effective way. So what you see on the screen right now is a typical cognitive profile of a child who is having dyslexia. Now, this particular student is a grade 4 student and is he's presently facing problems with his semantic abilities, which is to do majorly with words, ideas, sentences, comprehension, paraphrasing, narrative writing, etc. But if you actually go back to the basics, semantic abilities will only be strengthened, okay, if the child's basic foundational abilities of visual memory, visual closure, visual discrimination is developed. Now, these words sound very technical, but for me to simplify that, while I'm reading, I may skip certain words and sentences. I may read the word felt as left, okay? I may not see the addition sign and I may consider it as multiplication. During some problem, I may just skip certain things and arrive at a particular method. While I'm reading, I read very well, but suddenly you ask me the main character of this particular, exercise, and I'm lost. So it will talk to me about its reading abilities, its concept formation, numeracy, school learning abilities, and the application abilities. So our idea is not for diagnosis, okay? Diagnosis has to be done in a specific way using psychoeducational evaluation and assessments. What we are doing is evaluating them on the cognition, which is the software part of the mind, seeing those small parts, identifying where are the gaps, and filling those gaps through a cognitive intervention. In the same way, I have a typical cognitive profile of a grade 2 student who is coming with mild autistic symptoms. Now, when I talk about student who has mild autism symptoms, he could be somebody who will not maintain eye contact, okay? He will be somebody who will not be probably, delayed in speech. He will also be somebody who will physically be not very strong. He may be, fragile. The idea is that he may also be showing you some of the repetitions, like, he's flapping of hands. Like when you will tell him, Sam, don't do this. So he will repeat the same sentence to himself, Sam, don't do this. So challenges will come in many different ways. Difficulty in understanding them and they understanding us. What cognitive profile does is it's like a bridge. It helps these students for a pathway where it's not about communication, where it's not about repetition, but when his mind is engaged, doing cognitive exercises, doing mind exercises, it is forming that bridge that automatically reduces his those, sensitivities or his those flapping of hands or repetition of the same sentences. And here, if you see on this report, everything is actually cautionary, underdeveloped, okay, except for his visual memory. And these students learn best with imagery techniques, with visual reinforcements, and that's what the SOI program used to support this particular student. And then I am coming to a pre-post report. So far, what I showed you was a dyslexia student or mild autistic student. Now I'm showing you where we completed the program and how we see a progression in that child, where if you can notice clearly, there are gray graphs and black graphs. Gray graphs are pre-scores when the child came to us for the first time. And then we did those cognitive exercises. We helped them create new pathways. We make them learn certain new pathways. And the black graphs indicates his post-assessment. Now, this student, fidgety, restless, don't want to sit in one place, every time coming and saying, oh, you are using this laptop. Why are you using this laptop? You don't know how to write this. You don't know how to do Excel sheet. Can you not do it in this way? He wants to start every single game which was available in the school, but never wanted to complete it. Even he had major behavioral issues. And as Dr. Adrian said in the start, his diet was very bad. Nothing concrete and right what the parents were giving him, which was making this child more restless and fidgety and lack of sleep. Of course, getting him overall conditioned, regulating his activities, and doing all of these things, we saw the results that he has improved tremendously with his semantic skills, with his symbolic skills, and figural skills, which are the learning styles. You learn in one way, but you manifest your knowledge in another way. So, cognitive programs are many, they are very in-depth and vast. When we are working with SEND children, we need to incorporate 2, 3, 4 strategies or 4 therapies or 4 different works to meet the ends of the square in a most constructive way.
All right, thank you, Sada, for the SOI component. So if you were to ask me what's the recommended flow for kids and to build their learning abilities, so I've given it a lot of thoughts, and this year I came out with this recommended flow, right? So again, think of it as a hardware side and a software side. So for the hardware side, we can do brain assessments. So brain assessment can be like questionnaires, like the caregivers, the teachers, the parents can do a questionnaire so that we know the brain function of the kids, and then we can formulate a report. So this is the subjective side. While objective brain scans can be like we have right now, we have the quantitative EEG where you scan. So usually I have the kid come to my center and I scan it. I'm in Hong Kong right now. So after the 6-minute scan, a report comes out, and using AI technology and all that, we can know exactly like whether the kid is potentially having a diagnosis of ADHD, autism, depression, and so on and so forth. Because we're now in the AI age, and it's very, very exciting. So these are the hardware part, and we can also use other forms of assessment. Like in my center, I use the focus assessment, and then from the assessment we can then have a more concrete picture of whether the kid is exhibiting ADHD symptoms. So ADHD, we are looking at least 4 things. One is the consistency. Is the kid able to, perform well across various stimuli, not just the mobile phone, right? Number 2 is the child exhibiting impulsivity, right? And number 3 is the child able to perform timely, because some kids, when the teacher is asking a question, even when the question has been finished, the kid already raised their hand, and when the teacher called upon the child, and the child would just keep silent, something like that. And finally, in the focus assessment, we look at the distractibility. Will the child be distracted by visual stimuli more, or the audio stimuli, or could be both, right? So having these standardized assessments, we can objectively look at their hardware. And what's really interesting is right now I'm also on the board of the Harvard team, where we are using this H-meter assessment. If you go to hmeter.com, you can have a look at what I'm talking about. And H-meter actually can calculate the functional age of a person. So initially it was done for the elderly, like, elderly when you are like, so say 70 years old, you hope that your age will go lesser, right? But for children, it will be the opposite. Let's say a 12-year-old kid, we really want the kid to function as close to the age as possible, or as mature as possible. Like a 12-year-old kid able to function like 18-year-old, wow, impressive. You can say it's a gifted kid, right? So we have this H-meter to going through a battery of assessment, we can look at the functional age of the child. And from there, we can also determine whether the child is functioning well according to his or her chronological age. So these are the hardware part. And obviously the software will be none other than the structure of intelligence assessment, which Sadaf had talked about, that 90 over intelligence trait that we can assess. But I understand sometimes the location where you guys are can have this restriction in terms of how you can order these assessments. But the very least I would suggest is to at least go for the SOI assessment. That's to see whether the child is able to function according to his or her capacity at this stage. And through the SOI intervention, we can build up the child, to gain mastery over their other forms of intelligence trait as well. And last but not least, we can also consider using IQ tests, to look at the child's cognitive functioning as well. So with that, that's my presentation together with Sadaf. And let's see if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Adrian and Sadaf, for your invaluable input. Prior to tackling the questions, I would encourage all the participants to please fill in the feedback form and just pasting it in the chat box to give your valuable feedback. And provide us, the link is provided in the chat box. And if you're interested to know more details into our work and accessing the material, you can give us a date and time and we can connect with you one-on-one. Yes, so the first question has come from Ms. Fatea, that I'm a science teacher and have a SEND student in my class. I'm interested in learning effective strategies to engage SEND student in class activities, including worksheets and group activities with their peers. So she has a couple of questions. The first question is, what approaches or techniques have been successful in ensuring their participation and integration into classroom tasks? Dr. Adrian, would you like to take this out?
It really depends because, SEN, we have to really look at the context, right? So, for example, just now Sadaf talked about, some SEN kids, they need more visuals, right? So maybe we have to really learn about the learning style of the student, right? Some students are visual learners, some are auditory learners. It really depends. And I think as a teacher, it's really nice if we're able to personalize the teaching materials in a way that can adapt to the different learning styles of the students. Yeah, maybe Sadaf, you can also share
yes,
the
Sadaf,
SOI, the SOI
yes.
part of this as well.
Yes, would you like to add?
So when you're talking about students who are in the classroom, who come with their own set of challenges, you can incorporate a lot of basic cognitive general strategies as a part of your classroom. See, of course, you need a formal assessment to know more and give specific guidance. But like, for example, you can, use a conclusion technique. A conclusion technique is that the last 7 minutes of the classroom, everybody is given 2 minutes to think. And the next 5 minutes, students, get up randomly and speak for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, where they're just summarizing what just happened in the class. In the same way, we have a timeout technique. So all the sessions which involves a lot of explanation, a lot of content or information or knowledge to be shared, at that point of time, you have a timeout after exactly 12 minutes for one of the child, or maybe for a teacher to just put down those 3 points on the smart board or a blackboard. Okay, now what happens? Again, something which was so much of information suddenly got summarized in 3 points, which kind of made the child re-say that in his own mind. Yes, learning styles are very, very important for you to know, but at the same time, you need to understand. Like, for example, if there is a homework and everybody is given a homework to complete 2 pages, maybe this student needs to just selectively do certain questions, which you can just tick mark in his book, and that will help him to catch up with maths and science to a great extent. So like these, I can keep going on with a lot of common strategies. Using a structured assessment is very important. And at the same time, If you wish to know more techniques about what cognitive program we use and how do we implement as a part of school curriculum, you can get in touch with my team for the same.
I have pasted the feedback link once again in the chat box. I think because it has been working with us. I think it may be the internet connection. I will arrange to send it on to you on mail. Yeah. So the second question is, some sense students face bullying from classmates. How do I solve this problem? This is again from Ms. Fataya.
Yeah, this bullying thing is wow, it's I think not just in certain parts of the world, but in all parts of the world, right? Even in Hong Kong, you know, I've been seeing kids who have been bullied, whether it's right now or in the past. So I think first of all is we need to allow, you know, the student to able to express what happened to them, right? And again, we can utilize the strategy just I talked to you about, show our face, right? Show face, right? And allow the student to talk about the traumatic episodes, right? So for example, I have case where the student, you know, initially had been bullied by maybe about 2 students first, and one of the students was like telling her, you know, you look like a whore, you know, and she got so mad and upset, you know, and what's worse is right now bullying in today's age is not just happening in physically but in the cyber world as well, you know. So they might, you know, send Instagram messages to one another that in a way there's a lot of bullying messages, you know, and all that. So so basically when I see the kid, I have to allow, you know, the kid to tell me exactly what has happened, you know, and how do they feel about that, right? So me as a psychologist, my job is to help the kid to look at the event, you know, and what's the severity of the event, or how intensified is the event, how long has it been happening, you know, is it still happening right now, right? If it's happening right now, then we can do some problem solving. Maybe you can approach the teacher, but I think what the student which I met in the session, she did really well. She actually approached the vice principal. The vice principal knew about that. The vice principal took action and approached the children that's involved, right? Or the children who that was doing the bullying, right? And the bullying stopped. But while the bullying stopped, the traumatic experience has a negative effect on the entire well-being of the students. So that's where we have to, you know, provide, you know, psychotherapy or trauma therapy. And I would have the kid to list down all the traumatic experience that he or she has experienced, you know, from elementary school right up to secondary school. And each event, I'll ask him or her, what do you think? Ask the kid, what do you think about this? How do you feel? What are the emotions that's attached to it? So it could be anger, it could be fear, a lot, or it could be mixed emotions, right? And I think trauma therapy works very well for bullied students, you know. And one of the trauma approaches is to use the EMDR. Have you heard of that? Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a very, very good approach, you know, and highly encourage you guys to, especially if you're a counselor or a psychologist, go learn this approach, and you can do a lot of really wonderful work, you know, with these traumatized kids. I hope this helped you.
I'm not sure about what is happening with the feedback link, because when I tried to open it in my laptop, it opened. So we will send the feedback link to you on your mail, so that you can fill up the feedback form. So you will get it by tomorrow or by Monday. So the last question that has come up from her is that, is the subject teacher responsible to make the modified book of SEM student that match the content of the student book for a normal student?
Maybe Sadaf, you can work on this.
So yeah, sure. So when we talk about, is the subject teacher, please understand every school has a SEN department or special educators, remedial educators, counseling psychologists as a part of that department. Okay. Those people in charge of the department, they have their own set of formative assessments in the form of understanding the reading abilities, the spelling abilities, the numeracy abilities, okay, what we call as, the basic educational assessment which they do. And based on that, they guide the teacher, or often they exactly do the same thing. In most of the places, it is the individual remedial teacher who takes, care of all these things. But sometimes we are dealing with a large number of students in a particular school, and at that point of time, one or two remedial teachers need to extend their hands to join with the class teachers or subject teachers to make a difference in the students' overall learning. Shortening,
Right,
chunking is a method of mnemonics, okay, which is a technique to study, okay. So
right.
chunking means that where you're putting that one page into some small parts, which specifically the child will focus on, because when he goes on reading the whole page, his
Right.
attention, his memory, his comprehension, nothing is supporting him at that point of time.
Right. So one last question that has come up, that how do you monitor and measure the progress of students undergoing the cognitive training? And as a SEN teacher in special needs center, how can we get the access to the cognitive training? Sadaf, would you like to?
Okay, yeah. With regards to the cognitive training, you need to just reach out to Energia team. Okay, I understand today some problem is happening with the feedback link. You can write to us at soi@energiawellbeing.com, and my concerned team will get in touch with you. We will be happily wanting you to do a small pilot program first, where the training will be a part of it, and you can, assess a few students. And with that, if you feel that this is particular way of working further with students, then my team will discuss with you at the further intervention stage. Cognitive training otherwise is also very important, because you have to understand that often the failure of learning is not because the child doesn't want to learn. It is because he doesn't has that tool or weapon to learn that particular thing or grasp that particular thing. And along with that, we also need to incorporate his other areas of his life, which is important, whether it's the spiritual one, whether it's the hardware, software, whether it's the environment reinforcement, whether it's the healthy eating habits. Everything has to come in place for better regulation, for better management. You want to add anything, Dr. Adrian, over here?
Oh, I think it's good. Yeah. So yeah, we can look at learning ability from the strategy I talk about, the compass, like north, south, east, west. And I think that will be like the best approach in the world.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Adrian and Sabaf. With this, we come to the end of the question and answer section. If anyone has anything to ask or share, you can do so by unmuting yourself. Miss Yunoma, you have a question? Yes,
Yeah,
Miss Yunoma.
I'm trying to start. Hi, everyone. Sorry I came so late, but I was listening in.
Right.
My thing is, I heard most of the strategies. My challenge is, I wanted to just know if there's anyone here that has students with very severe needs in year 12, 13. So they cannot go to your standard. They can't do the final exam, but maybe if you have suggestions of vocational studies or basically what I can put in a transcript for them for these last 2 years of year 12, 13, to just make them at least even going for maybe a pre-degree program somewhere, anywhere in the world, really. If anyone here knows stuff like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Sada, would you like to see something about this?
What happens is, so I'm talking about from right now only from an India point of view. We have something what we call as NIOS, which is a National Institute of open schooling for children who come from these special learning needs. And once they finish through this particular board, their minimum education level, we do a lot of vocational programs with these children, and many colleges in India support that, because once they have achieved that, it allows them to take up a minimum job requirement for themselves at the basic level.
Okay, do you take students from outside India, or it's only Indian citizens?
Oh, they take students from outside India. Maybe you can refer to their website in detail and you will have more information for the same. I'm at the moment only aware from from an India point of view. I'm so sure every country would have something related to work on the vocational part of these special learning needs children. You just need to look for vocational courses after the minimum education, 10 plus 12 or 8 plus 10. You have these criteria to look for, and you would get the required need to support them.
Yeah, the thing, trust me, I've tried countries all over the world.
I'm so sure.
But they all want the basics, a year 11, at least cognitive level ability, which these students, I know they can't get up to. Most of them, like, at least let them get that. And so it's so hard. I've only found one place in the US, Embrace, in Florida International University. That's the only school I've seen that doesn't care for school certificates. They don't care what the child, as long as you're that age, they will take you in.
Yeah, same here. As long as you're of that age, they allow you to complete your education with minimum easy subjects for a student to clear the certain, criteria and all these things. You
Can you put the website link on the chat? So I'll just copy it and look for it.
I don't have the website link, but I will just message you the name so that in your personal chat, it will help.
Thank you. That is so helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, with this, we come to the end of this webinar. I would like to thank Dr. Adrian for joining us and giving us invaluable input. Thank you so much, Dr. Adrian, and we look forward to hearing from you more in future. Thank you so much for joining us. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Okay, take care wherever you are. Good night, good evening, good morning. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, each one of you, for your kind words. Thank you so much. We look forward to having you with us in our upcoming webinars. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I would like to take the liberty of ending the webinar. Thank you so much.